Good morning, comrades. You are listening to Good Morning, Comrade. We are here again. What's going on? I see we got G Wolf in chat. We got Jenny in chat. G Wolf was up telling, oh, it wasn't a Monday. No, I had it ready. I was rolling. I just had to figure out a technical problem. Speaking of technical problems, you were on the scene last night to tell me all about my YouTube woes. I don't know what the deal was last night with YouTube. It just decided it didn't want to run my show. I've been silenced and canceled by the evil YouTube machine, I guess. I don't know. It was, but I mean, again, it was a great episode that, you know, people couldn't watch on YouTube apparently because of all those problems. Good morning, Ginny. How are you today? Yeah, people couldn't watch it because you only watch it on Twitch or on Facebook or whatever. I don't know what the problem was. I even had problem when I was trying to set up the stream because I'm, you know, the software that I use. Like when you set it up, it takes a minute and it sort of like makes a link for all the, you know, all the streaming services. And for some reason, YouTube was acting up yesterday. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know. So what's up? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's you know, it's a beautiful Wednesday. We were supposed to get really awful, horrible, like tornado weather. There was parts of my area that got some, but I guess we were largely spared from the worst of it, from the brunt of it. So, you know, thank God for that. That's good and cool. But yeah, that's sort of, you know, we had a really cool episode last night with the one and only Elron Mexico, one of the greats. I love that guy. One of the funniest people, you know, on Twitter. I always love to play this video that he made a while back. absolute king of very funny commentary on Twitter. Here we go. Here's Elron Mexico right here.
Yes, I want healthcare for all. Of course, we want healthcare for all. John, do you want healthcare for all? Yeah. What about you, other John? What about you, fourth John? Yes, we all want healthcare for all. But here at Job Save America, we do our research, and there's a lot of different factors when it comes to Medicare for all that people don't think about. It's a lot more complicated and nuanced. First off, they got the deficit. Second off, they got gross domestic product. They also got GDP. They got the NASDAQ. They got the Nico Fund in China. They got they got international law. They got national law. They got boat law. They got maritime law. All these things
talking into a bottom of a like a Subway cup or something
fit together. So it basically wanting Medicare for all and not wanting Medicare for all, they are the same thing, as long as you want good things to happen to people. So, but we will find out. We will find the complex solution to these simple problems that the world needs right after the break. First, I got to read some copy. Here we go here. All right. Raytheon, missiles you could trust.
That's a good one. He released this one during the Sanders campaign in the middle of it, which was just like, I don't know, it got me stitched up.
You know, I think would be a good president? Mike Pence. You don't never hear nothing from that dude. He's like chill. I bet that dude smokes weed. I bet he would legalize weed. I'd vote. All right, so I've heard your cries and I've done my research, and it seems like I was wrong about Mike Pence. He would not legalize weed. But have you heard about Andrew Yang? UBI. Your big income, $1,000 a month forever. If you save it up for 83 years, you can die a millionaire, which is a personal goal of mine.
Like, I think I'm done with Yang. I heard about this lady named Tulsi Gabbard. Have y'all seen her? She's like smoking hot. She got some good ideas too. They got a picture of her in the bathtub.
I can't even support Tulsi anymore. Turns out she was a Russian stooge, a puppet for Putin. I'm Mayor Pete all the way. It doesn't even bother me that he's gay. Talking like a nerd. I can't vote for this clown. I just can't. I need somebody cool. Is Cory Booker still running for president?
Yeah. Bernie Sanders makes the most sense when you hear him talk, which is why I'm going to be voting for Elizabeth Warren, because they're basically the same thing. Last thing we need is another white male president.
Not voting for Elizabeth Warren. I found out she pretended to be a Native American. And as a Native American myself, I'm deeply offended. My great grandma was a full-blooded Cherokee.
He just goes through the entire list. It's fantastic.
So I'm back looking at Bernie. I just got a problem with his slogan though. Not me, us. Us? I'm busy. I gotta work. You fix it. That's how it's supposed to go, right?
Apparently, that is not how it's supposed to go. What we need is a militant group of revolutionaries to take on the establishment, which is why I've joined Austin's Red Guard.
So I got kicked out of the Red Guard. They said I was living in bourgeois opulence and that my double wide was designed for 2 families. And I was being greedy by living in both sides.
So I'm gonna give electoralism another shot, and I think I'm gonna go Bernie. I just hope he picks a chill vice president. Maybe somebody like Mike Pence.
The dude's great. He was on the show last night. We love Elron Mexico. You can follow him on Twitter at Elron Mexico. Just absolute sweetheart. We talked about game show hosts. We talked about presidents and their dogs. We talked about self-checkouts and all kinds of stuff, man. It was great. It's a great conversation. Like the best guy to talk to. He's awesome. We love the dude. Anyway, get on with the show. Let's start the show. How about we start the show, folks? Y'all ready to start the show? All right. So we all know that because most of us are in the above it all universe as well. Those of us who isn't, oh, he's not serious. He's having some fun. The guy is great. So we know that about the murder of Andrew Brown in Elizabeth City. Well, yesterday, the video was finally sort of seen for the first time publicly. I saw it for the first time last night, and it was horrifying. Can't show the video on stream for TOS reasons. It was, the guy's literally murdered on video here. But my sort of summary of all of it is a gang of cops rolls up into Andrew Brown's house while he's trying to pull up and away, literally like cops in the back of a truck with high-powered rifles already ready to go. Andrew Brown starts driving away, and they just execute him on the spot. And 0 of these cops have been charged. They apparently were, serving a warrant, some kind of a search warrant or something like that. Here, let's take a look at the WAVY video on this and see what we get. Is it actually called Wavy, or is that's ridiculous, right? Anyway, come on.
More from Brown's family this evening.
They are reacting to the decision that his killing was justified. 10 of your side's Tamara Scott is live in the newsroom and continues our team coverage. Tamara?
Well, the statement read today infuriated protesters and members of Brown's family who were waiting outside today, many saying it felt like a slap in the face.
I think that the SBI and plus the Pasquotank County work together because we have a corrupted law enforcement down to the judicial system.
Marie Frances Brown's cousin. She has been protesting and supporting her family from the moment Brown was killed. Hearing the decision from the DA and still not seeing all the body cam footage leaves her with more questions.
Why you ain't show it to
like,
us
look,
first?
they just
Why we
already
can't see
had
the tape?
guns pulled out on
Who
this dude.
did the kill shot? What did Andrew Brown do?
Brown's other cousin says regardless of the warrant deputies were there for, he feels like someone needs to be held more accountable.
It was a non-violent warrant. Okay. They came like there was a plan on the truck, like they already had it on his mind.
The local NAACP has it on their mind that this needs further investigation.
If this is looked at through the lens of the victim, which is Andrew Brown Jr. and his family, and not the justification of the sheriff's deputies' actions, that this should go forth to a grand jury and let them decide whether or not it needs to be into the courts.
Daniel Bowser says this isn't the end.
In due process, we're going to get justice. Everybody's angry. I'm angry, but I'm going to stay peaceful.
It looks like they had some nice sized protests out there.
And everybody need to just stay peaceful because we're going to get justice.
Governor Cooper tweeted out a statement today saying federal officials will continue to thoroughly investigate. He also called for the state to pass laws to increase transparency, confidence, and accountability in the justice system. Tamara Scott, 10 on your side.
Thank you, Tamara.
One of the key kind of points in this.
We have extensive coverage of the shooting.
One of the key points in this, the cops investigated the cops, and the cops found that the cops were innocent. Right, exactly. One of the key points in this that I keep thinking about, and Andrea talks about this on Above It All extensively, is that the cops knew that this video was bad. They knew that the reason, they knew that this was like a straight up murder of somebody on a warrant, on like a search warrant or whatever. And they also knew that people would be very upset when they saw it. So they waited, despite, several weeks of protests by, the citizens of Elizabeth City and Andrew Brown's family. They just sat on it for 20 some odd days. I can't remember. It was 21, 24, something like that. And then finally decided, now, when we've decided already that the cops that are involved are not going to be charged in any way, then we'll release it. Then it'll be okay. because at that point it's going to be over with. So that was the plan, and that was the strategy the entire time. But make no mistake about that, the cops did that. Like that course of events happened in that particular way for a very specific set of reasons. Now, it looks like to me, the people of Elizabeth City are not going to stop anytime soon. There have been protests every single day out in that city since the murder of Andrew Brown. And like I say, for more on that, check out Andrea's show Above It All. She is literally at the protests every single day. She hasn't missed a day yet. I don't know how I couldn't do that. But anyway, yeah, that's the way to keep up the most on that. I just want to give a quick update on that issue. But yeah, it's horrifying. Yeah. So anyway, I got a couple of more stories. I did want to touch on Israel, Palestine, and the war. There was a general strike yesterday in Palestine. I wanted to get into that, and I want to talk a little bit about how we'll see in just a minute. Let's just the aggressions will continue, but let's look at the general strike.
This is a well-worn road. At one end, Palestinian protesters driven by years of occupation, what two recent human rights reports have defined as apartheid, angered and sustained by events in Jerusalem and Gaza. At the other, the implacable militarized position of the Israeli forces, blocking the way and more. This is how this day would play out. Huge shows of force, pushing back the crowd. Then, young men in small...
Let's go back here. We have a group of people who are literally... This is not that... It's a group of people. I don't see anybody rowdy. I don't see anybody like
at one end, Palestinian
problems. I see people protesting literally the murder of children and civilians, around 200 at this point, in the Palestinian occupied territories, in Gaza, from Israeli airstrikes. So, it's not like they're just dying. They're being killed by, Israeli bombs. Here they are protesting their problems, and look what
protesters driven by years of occupation, what two recent human rights reports have defined as apartheid, angered and sustained by events in Jerusalem and Gaza.
Look at these guys. I'm sorry, look at these guys and gals and non-binary pals, because I forget that the IDF is like woke, so excuse me for that. But look at this. They're just like ready for war. They look like they're from Starship Troopers.
The implacable militarized position of the Israeli forces, blocking the way
and that's just
and
civilians.
More. This is how this day would play out. Huge shows of force, pushing back the crowd. Then, young men in small groups gradually approaching within tens of meters of the Israeli fortifications, peppering them with rocks and glass marbles.
They're throwing rocks, man. Look, they throw some rocks. These people are in literal, like, head-to-toe body armor, and they're going to come tackle these kids. Like, you can just ignore them throwing the rocks.
Israeli tactics varying from attempting to rush and detain them to overwhelming them with tear gas and foul-smelling water to considerably worse.
So Israeli forces are strengthening their position after those stone throwers got pretty close to the checkpoint here. And as you can see on the road just in front of us, a sniper team has taken up position.
Snipers.
Later, as we reported live, there was no rushing, no show of force, simply sniper fire from a protected position on unarmed...
When they talk about Gaza being an open-air prison, this is what they're talking about. Like, literally. Like, the fact that they're essentially having sniper teams ready to murder anybody who's, like, gets uppity. Like, it's actually insane.
Protesters. One man fell injured in front of us and was taken out by ambulance. One among many here, among dozens across the occupied West Bank. Near the illegal settlement of Beit El, close to Ramallah, The gunfire was at one point going both ways. This is a rare shooting attack on an Israeli military position during a confrontation, a sign of the seriousness of this current upsurge in violence. 2 Palestinians were killed here, 2 Israeli soldiers injured.
I think our life,
you got exactly. You got people on one side with, throwing rocks, kids throwing rocks or using like slingshots or whatever. Kids basically wearing, t-shirts and shorts as their armor at, IDF forces who are, like I said before, covered from head to toe in body armor with helmets and high-powered rifles and sniper rifles to be on the other side. That's literally what the dynamic is right now. That is how much of a power imbalance there is in this situation. It's unconscionable.
It's just only spark, because we are living under this pressure. We are living under this discrimination regime, oppressive regime. That's the situation.
This had been declared a national strike and a day of rage, observed too in occupied East Jerusalem. Confrontations breaking out at Damascus Gate and in Sheikh Jarrah, where a long simmering protest against forced expulsions of Palestinians has in part fueled this wider violence. In the southern occupied West Bank city of Hebron, a Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces who said he was carrying a knife, a homemade gun, and an explosive device. A brutal day to add to the tally of the last week. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank.
Just absolute nightmare what's going on out there. And we have also more reporting of so essentially the offensive by the Israeli government will continue as well. Here's another report from Al Jazeera.
For the first time in decades, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, Palestinians both in the occupied territories and those living in Israel are taking part in protests and a general strike. They are calling it a day of rage. This was Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank just a short time ago, where there have been confrontations between Israeli security forces and Palestinian protesters. Israeli security forces are using live ammunition there. At least 12 Palestinians have been injured. We are also hearing reports of Israeli snipers in the area. Similar scenes near Ramallah as well, where there have been armed confrontations between some protesters and Israeli security forces. Those are still ongoing, though they have calmed down a little bit. There have also been tense scenes in Nablus in the occupied West Bank, where demonstrators have been facing off with Israeli security forces. One Palestinian protester was killed and more than 160 others injured during demonstrations across the West Bank. 2 Israeli soldiers have also been wounded. And earlier, this was a scene near...
Let's go back again.
In the occupied West Bank, where demonstrators have been facing off with Israeli security forces. One Palestinian protester was killed and more than 160 others injured during demonstrations across.
1 killed, 160 injured. And how many IDF our Israeli military people were hurt?
The West Bank. 2 Israeli soldiers have also been wounded.
2 have been wounded.
And earlier, this was a scene near Damascus Gate in the occupied East Jerusalem. Protesters there heeded calls for demonstrations, but were met with an Israeli crackdown. A photojournalist was targeted, and many protesters were beaten. Let's go first to Al Jazeera correspondent Nida Ibrahim. She was reporting live to us near Ramallah when those shots were fired. She was talking to my colleague Hala Mahdi.
To talk more about
you don't want to mess with that big dude. That dude is not scared of that IDF soldier, who's armed to the teeth with a weapon. This dude right here,
reporting live to us near Ramallah when those shots were fired. She was talking to my colleague Hala Mahdi.
To talk more about what brings these protesters here, we're joined now by a Palestinian who was at the protest, Layali Hamail. You have been living here, you were born and raised under occupation. What makes you think that protests?
Jesus Christ! You can't even have a conversation with the reporter without there being just gunshots.
Occupation. What makes you think that protests? Nita, we're seeing crowds are leaving. We're not sure what's going on. There are people, Palestinians, who are standing.
Okay, Nita, can you get down and get to a place of safety, please?
Yes, we are ducking now because it seems like there are bullets.
Okay, Nita, we're gonna let you get to a place of safety because it sounds rather dangerous
I
where
wanted
you're
to see the
reporting
interview
from.
too. Holy crap!
Nita Ibrahim, we're gonna check in with you and come back to you later on.
Let's go to Nida Ibrahim. She's live for us now. Nida, that was very dramatic, that footage there taking place live on air. Talk us through exactly what happened and were any people injured as a result of it?
Hold on, I'll be right back.
We were here reporting from a hill overlooking the confrontations here near the illegal Israeli settlement of Bet El. When we heard gunshots and people leaving, we believe that those were Palestinian militants shooting towards the Israeli army that is near the illegal settlement of Bet El that has been already firing at the Palestinian protesters at the scene. Now, later on, the confrontations intensified and the Palestinians have been leaving the scene. We're seeing many less numbers than the ones we've been seeing since the protest started. When the protest started, we were talking about the largest protest that we've been seeing since the start of the escalation last Monday. But now more Palestinians are returning to the scene, and we hear every now and then sounds of shots from the Israeli forces, and then we hear the ambulances taking those wounded to the hospital. Now, as a result of that exchange of fire, we weren't able to identify how many Palestinians were shot at by that certain exchange of fire. But all in all, Palestinian medical sources talk about several hundred Palestinians who have been injured all over the occupied West Bank in confrontations going on in different cities as well. But they say that 63 of these injuries were here in Ramallah, were transferred to hospitals in the city, and that more than half of those were hit by live ammunition.
And Nida, do we have a sense of how things are going to develop now? Because the day started off, as you were describing, with many thousands of people coming out.
She said more than half of the protesters that were injured were hit by live ammunition. So, like, they said that they're using, all the horrible other things, the skunk water, the tear gas, the rubber bullets, but they're also using real ammunition to shoot at peaceful protesters. I mean, again, what are you supposed to do if you're if you're living in Palestine right now and you want to express that your home is being attacked by it being essentially first in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, they are like evicting people from their homes. Okay, that's bad. Already worth this. Then there's essentially like a retaliation with rocket fire by Hamas. Not necessarily the best idea. That's not the first place I would go, but it's what happened. And then Israeli airstrikes, bombing civilians, literally destroying the Al Jazeera building and the Associated Press building, to essentially scare press in a lot of ways, even though they claimed completely baselessly, the Israeli government did, that they thought that there was like Hamas targets in there, which shouldn't matter because it's still press. And also that leaves out the fact that, despite the fact that I don't like Hamas and I think that the approach that they take is wrong, the approach that they take is wrong, especially when it's firing missiles. That is an act of essentially like it's an act of desperation. And to be 100% clear, it's still not. It's not effective in terms of like stopping the Israeli assault, because it just gives the Israelis just decide, hey, we're going to use that as a reason to just bomb neighborhoods, bomb buildings, just murder indiscriminately. And then when you try and do, the peaceful protest, you get rubber bullets, you get skunk water, you get pepper spray, you get all the bad stuff, tear gas, and live ammunition shot into crowds. So there is literally nothing you can do if you're a Palestinian to protest your government, because you don't have representation in your government. You literally don't have rights in Israel or in the Israeli Knesset, because they view the Palestinians as essentially like a completely other group of people. You can't, second-class citizens, or not citizens at all, even, despite the fact that Israel's government controls the area. It's absolutely unconscionable. This is literally a genocide happening right now, and the U.S. is on the wrong side of that. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the U.S. is Joe Biden's administration is supporting the occupation by the Israeli government of the Palestinian people, which is unconscionable. Your tax dollars, your money that and again, I'm not I'm not an anti-taxes person. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not like that guy. But at the same time, when that money that you pay in taxes goes to funding war and funding genocide and funding all these horrible things that the U.S. government does support, you should be pretty freaking pissed about that, and you should do something about that. Just let's continue the video.
More than half of those were hit by live ammunition. And Nida, do we have a sense of how things are going to develop now? Because the day started off, as you were describing, with many thousands of people coming out, including families with children. Then the scene turned violent. It is heading towards evening now where you are. Do we have an understanding at all of how things are going to develop? Well, this scene of exchange of fire is something that is not usual in these protests. We see them every few years, potentially happening in different military, happening near military checkpoints. But it's not something that we can say it happens regularly. It's hard for us to predict what's going to happen once the sun sets. Usually when the sun sets, it becomes dark and the surroundings here become very dangerous. It's hard to know where the Israeli army is coming from, or whether if more militants are going to arrive at the scene. It's very unlikely, since the West Bank is not known for its weapons. And usually the Israeli army, when they receive information about people who are carrying arms, they go in and arrest them and take them. So it's hard to predict how the day is going to be heading when it comes to those firing or militant Palestinians. But when it comes to those protesters, I can tell you that many of them are still here. They're refusing to go, but the numbers are much less than the ones we've seen since the protest started here near the illegal Israeli settlement of Beit El.
Nida Ibrahim there for us in Ramallah. Many thanks. Let's take you now to Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. Our correspondent Harry Fawcett is live there. Harry, many dramatic scenes where you were earlier today. We were seeing all kinds of tactics being used by the Israelis. Talk us through what happened where you are.
Sure. Well, I mean, just right now, a couple more stones have just landed sort of near our feet here. You can see the protesters are really quite a long way pushed back in the distance, but the pattern has been that they will gradually approach this Israeli border police or military area. What we also heard just before we came on air was a large volley of tear gas to this side of the camera, which is to the west, where we know that the Aida refugee camp is. So it seems that a lot of the concentration of the action has now moved from this street to that refugee camp. Earlier, though, as you say, yes, this was the focal point of many encounters and injuries sustained on the Palestinian side between the Palestinian protesters and the Israeli military here. What we've seen is them approaching, throwing stones. Initially, when the larger body of the protest headed up this road, there was an immediate dispersal of them by a very large round of tear gas. And since then, it's been these sort of running skirmishes where people will approach, throw stones, and then the Israelis will do one of a number of things. They've been out surprising them from hidden areas in houses nearby, grabbing one of them violently and taking them away. They've been using the tear gas and skunk water to drive them away. They usually involving troops coming out and confronting in one way or another. But in the most recent such episode, nobody came out from the outpost here behind us. It was simply the use of sniper fire. We saw one man fall down, injured by that live bullet, and the street was dispersed pretty quickly as people ran into the alleyways and further up the street away. We know that there have been at least 12 injuries here by Israeli live fire. Another 11 at least hit by rubber-coated steel bullets, one of those at least a puncture wound from that weaponry. There's also, as I say, been skunk.
Yeah, the healthcare system in Palestine is also extremely bad because, I mean, again, it's a completely impoverished area because of the occupation. You're right about that, Jenny, 100%.
Water, this very toxic, very putrid, chemically laced water being used, and stun grenades and tear gas very, very heavily. So dozens of people also injured in terms of the effects of that tear gas.
Yeah, Harry, I was actually going to ask you for you to describe what skunk water is. We can't assume that people watching know what that is. Do you get a sense, at least from what you're describing, that quite heavy-handed tactics are being used there by the Israeli military to bring that protest to an end?
To say the very least, it's extremely heavy-handed. I mean, we're talking about stones and rocks and children's marbles just a few centimeters in diameter being thrown against a wall of concrete and steel behind which the Israeli troops are stationed. And in return, the amount of firepower we've seen on display just in this isolated protest on this particular few hours of one afternoon is pretty extraordinary. Not least, of course, in fact, the most dangerous and lethal of all of that is the live fire that we've been seeing used. We've seen snipers shooting people.
So again, you got kids throwing rocks and marbles versus, like you said before, everything from tear gas, rubber bullets, skunk water, pepper ball, all the like stuff you see happening in the U.S. Plus live fire, live ammunition. He literally mentioned that he saw a guy get shot by a sniper and go down. Like, this is what the situation is. They're just like, it's like it's shooting fish in a barrel to them.
Who have been using slingshots and their own bare hands to throw objects at this very heavily protected, very heavily armed First World Army. And so, yes, that is how things play out here. It's how things are playing out right now. No deaths that we have reported here so far, but there have been elsewhere. There was, as Nida was reporting, an exchange of fire further north, further south. The day began with an attempted, according to the Israelis, an attempted attack at a checkpoint outside Hebron, where the Israeli army says they were approached by a Palestinian who was carrying a homemade gun, a knife, and some kind of explosive device, and that he was shot and, in their terms, neutralized. That means he's been killed.
Okay, many
As
thanks
though
for
he's
that,
like
Harry
a
Fawcett,
threat.
there for us in Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. As Harry was saying, those protesters moved quite far back down that street. We can't really see them very clearly, but they are still there.
It's like a dead zone.
Let's take you to southern Israel, and our correspondent Imran Khan is live.
All right. So I do want to actually take a look at this clip from it was Bernie Sanders talking with Ali Velshi on the U.S. providing aid to the, Israeli military. If you remember, Ali Velshi, who is an MSNBC reporter, did a very good video just the other day, actually laying out for the first time that I've seen probably in my entire life on cable news an actual accounting of the situation in Gaza, and actually use the term apartheid, which is great. So, for whatever, problems Ali Velshi may have as a mainstream reporter, this is not one of them. So let's take a look at him and Bernie Sanders. And remember, and before we do that, though, I just want to remember and point out that considering we have mainstream reporters like Ali Velshi, he's kind of alone in that. I could be wrong if anybody else is doing any kind of great work like that. I know Mehdi Hassan on MSNBC as well. He's not quite as high a profile, but he's been doing some very good reporting on this as well. I've seen more public support for the Palestinian people who are, being not just oppressed, they're being assaulted. Genocide is not, again, a word that I've used. Apartheid is definitely slam dunk for what's going on there. So we have, media support, at least some. We have popular support, and we have now support in Congress. We have the squad, like we mentioned earlier, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, even Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Cori Bush have all made fantastic statements on the House floor, supporting the Palestinian people. And here's Bernie Sanders as well, with Ali Velshi.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, you call yourself a democratic socialist. You and I agree on things like universal health care. I've always made the argument, as you know, that most of the free world uses universal health care in some fashion. It's not actually socialist. It's if you're a capitalist, it's just better. It's just a better system. But are you concerned by this socialist attack?
If you want to win me over in a conversation, like, you just basically say that universal healthcare system is better than the crap bullshit that we have here. So good start.
On the Biden agenda, Joe Biden's nearly not much of a socialist.
No, he's not. And the proposals that Biden is bringing forth and that I'm bringing forth are in fact widely popular. Should we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? It's what the American people want. Should we provide health care to every man, woman, and child as a human right? That's what the American people want. Right. Should we make public colleges and universities tuition free? Yeah, that's what the American people want. Should we create millions of jobs by addressing the crisis of climate change? Yeah, that's what the American people want. So the agenda that we are supporting is an agenda that the American people want. And the agenda that the Republicans are supporting, tax breaks for billionaires.
I think with specifically the labels thing, that's just a media thing. Like media likes to put like press. It makes it easy to categorize people into specific lanes, just to kind of keep things straight in your head. I guess I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just saying that this is what they do. It makes it easier to report on these kinds of things when people use when people use a label like that.
People want. And the agenda that the Republicans are supporting, tax breaks for billionaires, voter suppression, etc., are certainly not very popular. So they are throwing out all kinds of rhetoric to try to defeat Biden's initiatives.
Should Democrats do something about that, though? Because all of those things you just talked about, $15 minimum wage, health care for everyone, these are not social. Socialism is government control of production. There isn't a single thing on the table that is socialism. Is it
quickly, like socialism is worker control of production, and workers would control the government. So like it's only government control if the workers control that government. Just wanted to really point that out really quickly. Is like I don't agree with the term that Bill she put in there.
There work to be done on the part of Democrats to say, you're just talking nonsense?
Well, it goes beyond that, Ali. Where we are right now, to my mind, is the great crisis we're facing politically now is not even a debate over the issues. It's whether or not we remain a democracy. And what happened to Liz Cheney, look, Liz Cheney is an extraordinary conservative congresswoman. Yes. I agree with her on nothing. But she was thrown out of the leadership of the Republican Party for the crime of telling the truth, of making it clear that Donald Trump lost the election, that it was a fair election. And for that, she's no longer part of the Republican leadership. And what we are seeing in states all across this country, not just Georgia and Texas and Michigan, but all across this country, is an effort on the part of the Republican Party to suppress the vote, to make it very, very difficult for lower income people, young people, people of color to vote, and to instill incredible gerrymandered districts to encourage billionaires to be able to buy elections rather than deal with real campaign finance reform. So the fight we are dealing with right now, Ali, is whether or not this country is going to be a democracy, or we're going to move to an authoritarian cult led by Donald Trump.
Senator, you published an op-ed. I delivered a commentary yesterday on the fact that we do need to start taking the rights of the human rights of Palestinians into account. Senator Ted Cruz, not talking about you, but talking about the squad's opposition to things. He said this on Thursday. It's disgraceful that you have members of the United States Congress that basically operate as shills for terrorists and undermine Israel. And they undermine Israel so often that after a while you start to say, okay, we get it.
Ted Cruz is such a fucking piece of shit. I'll tell you what, like the video that we just saw of a giant like protest of people peacefully making their way down, demonstrating that they're not cool with their homes being bombed by Israeli airstrikes. Ted Cruz frames that as terrorism. Like fuck Ted Cruz. Like Ted Cruz is the worst.
You don't like the Jews. Folks have said that about you too.
Yeah. How saying that protesting your own homes being bombed, your own like neighborhoods in Sheikh Jarrah, and being evicted, people being evicted from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah, and also like people being evicted from kicked out of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the middle of Ramadan. That's hating Jews.
How do we understand the ability to criticize the policies of the Israeli government as being entirely separate from and counter to anti-Semitism?
No, that's exactly right. The Israeli government has evolved over the years into a pretty strong right-wing government, and their coalition now includes people who are overt racists. And when you have the United States of America, Ali, putting almost $4 billion a year into Israel, we have the right to demand that they respect the human rights of all people, including the Palestinians. What we need now is an even-handed policy which protects the security of Israel. They have a right to live in peace and security without terrorist attacks. But the people in the Palestinian territories also have a right to live in peace and dignity. And anyone who takes a look at what's going on in Gaza right now, where youth unemployment is 70%, and I'm talking about before the this current war and the terrible things that have happened in the war, where youth unemployment is sky high, where people can't get electricity and clean water on a regular basis. This is a territory controlled by Israel. So we got to deal with the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. We got to deal with that. But we have also got to create a situation where the people in the Palestinian territories are respected as well.
Covered a lot of ground here, Senator. Thank you for joining me this morning, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Always good to have you on the show. And
yeah, okay, we're moving on. One more thing I want to talk about today, and it's actually some good news. And I wanted to read this story because I have a friend that was actually posting about this just last night. Huge update in the Pittsburgh. So Pennsylvania has elections that I guess this was primary elections. So I saw it looked to me like Larry Krasner, who was running for re-election as DA, has won the Democratic nomination. No surprise there. But one something that is a surprise is Bill Peduto, who is the sitting mayor in Pittsburgh, was unseated in the primary. So he's effectively a lame duck mayor in Pittsburgh. And he was beaten by this guy right here, Ed Gainey, who would be potentially the first ever black mayor in Pittsburgh. Let's read, because I believe it's not just the fact that he's going to be the first black mayor that's notable here. One, he unseated the sitting mayor or the sitting mayor in the primary, and then two, he had labor behind him, and unions, so he's got like a good agenda, which matters a lot. So let's take a look at the story. Pittsburgh mayoral race. Ed Gainey upsets Mayor Bill Peduto in historic win. The story was updated at 8:47 a.m. just a couple of minutes ago today. Being a two-term incumbent in a race centered on equity, State Rep Ed Gainey won the Democratic primary on Tuesday, which would pave the way to becoming Pittsburgh's first ever black mayor. Mr. Gainey was beating incumbent Mayor Bill Peduto 46-39 as of just before 9 a.m. Wednesday, with retired police officer Tony Moreno garnering 13% of the vote, and local rideshare driver Michael. Damn, a rideshare driver got like 1% of the vote. That's pretty sick. That's pretty cool. This is from Peduto. And again, I don't know Pittsburgh politics too much. I don't know how unacceptable as a Democrat Bill Peduto was, but the fact that there was a challenge against him indicates something. Here's a tweet from him. I just called Ed Gainey and congratulated him on earning the Democratic endorsement for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, wishing him well. Thank you, Pittsburgh, for the honor of being your mayor for the past 8 years. I will remain forever grateful. Gainey, a 51-year-old lawmaker representing a district stretching from Highland Park to Wilkinsburg, frequently asked for who is Pittsburgh most livable, a question that he backed with facts from many task forces and reports. His message seemed to match the moment, and he thanked God, his wife, his children, his mother, his stepfather, and all of his campaign staff after Peduto conceded. One person doesn't change a city. This is Gainey talking. A city is changed with all of us. A city is changed when we all come together to improve the quality of life for everyone. That's why I ran for mayor, because I believe we can have a city for all. So the rhetoric's good. Hopefully he can deliver. He ran his campaign against that backdrop of, basically making a city for all. Aiming to become the city's first ever black mayor on a platform of fighting for everyone and not just the few. Hey, that's for the many, not the few. That's like momentum rhetoric from the UK Labour Party back when it was good. He accused Peduto of breaking promises and recycling empty rhetoric when communities of color continue to suffer. Quote, "We work hard. Not just I as mayor, but we as a community and we as a city will work to build a better city called Pittsburgh for everybody. We will embrace justice. We will do all that we will have to do to make this a city that's welcoming for everybody." I mean, I'm here for this. I mean, like, hopefully, you know, I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. I don't know Pittsburgh, you know, particularly well. Insofar as like how the politics sort of shake out. I imagine it's a, you know, fairly nice sized city. I think the Democrat usually wins these kinds of things, so that's interesting. And this is a good development. So yeah, yay for good news, right? Yay for good news. And I guess we can just sort of like leave on that little high note. I can wrap it up. Definitely check out the interview that we did with Elron Mexico on it's on YouTube. It's going to be coming out as a podcast tomorrow as well. We got more coming out. I know we're going to be putting out as a podcast the interview we did with Kenzo Shibata, which we did over the weekend, and more. Check out, go right now after I go off the air, check out Above It All on YouTube. Her Cyber Demon 531. Andrea is, I'm no doubt going to have some updates on the situation in Elizabeth City, which we talked at the top of the show. And also, folks, please, thank you to G Wolf, who recently supported us on Patreon, patreon.com/Good Morning Comrade. We want to get to our goal of 25 patrons. If that happens, well, you know what? Y'all come up with it and tell me what y'all want me to do when I get to 25. I can, you know, paint my nails. I can do some cat ears. I can do some other silly things. I'm not above, you know, dancing for the camera, folks. We want to get this thing to make it sustainable, and if it's base humiliation of me that'll make that happen, fine. I'm here for it. I'll do it. You monsters, you absolute beasts. Anyway, yeah, check us out. All the places, patreon.com/Good Morning Comrade. Please help us out. Also, one super last thing. We had a problem last night with YouTube. I don't know why we couldn't get it on there, but you know, G Wolf went over to Twitch and it worked just fine. And I was actually looking at our numbers the other day, and we actually meet almost all of the criteria to become Twitch affiliate, except for number of viewers. Like most of our viewers for the show watch on YouTube. And we only need a couple an hour or a couple viewers per day for a series, you know, for a certain amount of time. I think it's 30 days to make us eligible for a Twitch affiliate, which means that we would be able to do subscriptions and channel points and do all kinds of other things with our channel. We can start making emotes. Yeah, if y'all would actually start watching on Twitch, that would be awesome. That would actually help us out a ton. But anyway, thank y'all so much for watching. Yeah, that would be dope, G-Wolf. That would be sick. Like I'm cheating and I have Twitch open on my phone and I'm watching on my phone. Just gotta boost those numbers up. But anyway, yeah. I'm gonna go check out Andrea for now. But yeah, patreon.com/Good Morning Comrade, twitch.tv/Good Morning Comrade Radio. And yeah, that's what I do. I got it open on a pig. All right, folks. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.